So one of the things that everybody wants to do is cake toppers, and I love doing them. I must admit, I absolutely love doing them. They're super fun. So I'm gonna first show you a basic layered one before we move on to the shaker cake toppers. I think the layered ones are fun. They are a little bit difficult in terms of, so what I find with the shaker cake toppers is because you've got a lot of layers to it, it's nice and sturdy. With the ones that aren't shakers, so just the normal layered ones, you have to take into account that the base has to be able to hold up everything else that's on it, basically. So for this one, I'm doing a little Spider-Man one. I'm going to be doing print and cut. So one of the things you need to think about is, what do you want your end result to be? And is what you're creating going to be strong enough to hold itself up, basically? So one of the important things is that everything should be connected. If there's pieces that aren't connected, they're going to just hang off into space, into oblivion. So we are doing a spider web. So what I want to do is, I actually want, you can see my point, that's going to hide my cake stick, basically. So I want that to be in the middle. There we are. That's perfect. So what I did is I inserted a web and I added an offset to it. The reason I did that is because if you look at a web, it's very thin. There's a lot of intricate cuts in it. If you don't add some thickness to it, it's not going to be able to hold itself up. So you've got to add that thickness so that it obviously creates a nice sturdy base. So one of the things that I would suggest, Craft Buddies has a Curious Metallics range, and it's one of my favorite cardstocks ever. It is a bit pricey, so I don't use it for everything, but for something like a base, it gives me enough strength to be able to hold my project together. It's got that shimmer to it, so it just adds that little bit extra. So for a lot of my bases, I use that specific cardstock. So the next thing you're going to do is add in your image, whatever it is that you want on it. So I went with Spider-Man because obviously it's a Spider-Man cake topper. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an offset to that. And we want it to be a very small offset. We don't want it to be huge and dramatic. Let's see. That works. Okay, then we've added in our number, and you can see I've already got an offset for that. And we've also got our words, which also has an offset. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to select all of our offsets, and we're going to weld that. And then we're going to send that to the back. There we are. So all of our stuff's still there. So basically, we've now added strength to our image, or to our base. By adding in solid parts, we have reinforced it in a way that people can't see. So they will obviously see it from the background. Unfortunately, that's unavoidable. But from the front, it's going to look great. So if you have like a solid base, what I do is I hide the background with like a solid circle. You don't ever want them to be able to see the, what do you call it? You don't want them to be able to see all of the stuff stuck on at the back. And you want it to be as neat as possible. So for this one, I'm actually going to duplicate my weld result. And I'm going to send that to the back. That is going to be what hides my cake stick. And it's going to add that extra little bit of something. So as you can see, that is super, super simple. And I think the most important thing with any cake topper is just to think about the mechanics of it. So it's, how do I reinforce my objects so that they hold themselves up? How do I do this in such a way that nothing is falling off? So I did one, for instance, the other night where it was wording and I forgot to connect the first letter to the rest of the word. So basically the rest of the word was drooping because it wasn't connected to the first letter. All that I had to do was connect the first letter and it worked out perfectly. So it's simple things like that. If you want it to be super 3D, it's how many layers do I need to add to it. So you can add as many layers as you need. For this specific top, I was sent to design and I was asked to do it like that. So if you want to add lots of layers, what you would do is you would add offsets. That's all you would do. And you think about, okay, how far out do I want it to stand out from the cake? Do I want it to be super 3D? Do I want it to be more of a flat image? So it really does just come down to the design. If your cake topper itself is not working out, you have to revert back to the design and see where you can fix it. So something that somebody asked on one of the videos was pricing. So I specifically use cost of materials times 2 and I add 35% onto that for my time. So you can charge whatever you want to. There are so many different formulas to it. So for this one, I think this is an 18 centimeter. So let's just increase that to 18. Yeah. So for this one, we're looking at about 100 Rand for this. Just because you're using print and cut, which is one type of cardstock, you're using Curious Metallics, which is a very thick, heavy cardstock. You're using red, you're using blue. So there's a lot of materials that go into it. I don't think it's a cheap craft. There's also the acrylic cake stick that needs to go into it. So I don't think it's a cheap craft, and I think sometimes people tend to forget that. My advice is always charge your worth. At the end of the day, it is your time, it is your effort, it is your creativity. So charge what you are worth. So let's get to making this. So for our Spider-Man cake topper, I've actually duplicated Spider-Man. And the most important thing to remember is make sure that your page is set to A4. That will make sure that the page you print matches what needs to be cut. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to print that. Let's just double check these. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say continue. And we're going to say send to printer. So what we're going to say is we're going to say use system dialog. So for this one, I don't need a bleed. I think I added a very thin white offset. I mean, we can add a bleed. Let's change this to the printer we're using. And the most important thing, use system dialog. So we're going to say print. We're going to select our printer and we're going to say preferences. And this is where you get to set up how you want your page to print. So I'm going to make sure that everything's set. I want high quality, I want it to be plain paper, and I want it to be A4. We're then going to print. I wanted to show you the print and cut part of this because if you're battling with print and cut, then that's definitely an issue. You shouldn't have problems with it. So yes, I'm using a pink mat because my other mats are dead, so make a plan. So let's just run through this process. And that is literally how painless it should be. So let's test to see that it's cut through. So we always roll our mat away from our cardstock. It's cut through. So what I then do is I just sort of literally roll my mat, because I don't want my actual project to get bent. Mat, yeah, it's okay. So if you look at, sorry, if you look at this, you can see that it's cut our bleed off. But other than that, it is cut beautifully. My Spider-Mans look amazing, and I'm quite happy with that. So I'm pulling these away from the mat, if that makes sense. I'm not pulling them upwards, so they're not bending. I didn't need to, but I have to just in case. So if your print and cut is not that painless, there's definitely a problem, and I would definitely contact member care. If you've set everything up correctly, if your machine is working correctly, if the software is updated, if your machine's updated, then your print and cut should be absolutely painless. It should not be a difficult thing. So you obviously just have to remember to set it up properly, and then it should work after that. So now we get to put together our project. So I'm going to set up the camera for the next part, and then we can get done. Okay, so we're going to get to assembling our cake topper. So this is super simple to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stick the name down. So as you can see, this is the Curious Metallics. This one I think is more of a brown, so I'm actually just going to use it at the back. So the first thing we're going to do is stick our name on. And what I like about this method, oopsie, that's a lot. What I like about this method, where we have sort of everything, oh, that's a lot, lads. Where we have everything welded together, is it actually gives us an idea of where to stick things. Oopsie. So for this I'm using Tombow glue. So I must admit this Tombow glue is really freaking awesome for cardstock stuff. There we are. Next I want to stick this flat onto our topper. So for that I'm actually going to use this back end. Oopsie, we gotta make sure we got it right. There we are. And then I actually want the 4 to be 3D. So here's my plan, okay? I think that the Spider-Man should be 3D. And I think that the 4 should be 3D. So for that, what I would do is use my double-sided tape. And you don't want to stick it too close to the edges, and you don't want to have huge pieces either. Oh, that's got a hair in it. Oh no. So that's the only thing about double-sided tape, is that everything gets stuck to it, and especially if it's a cheaper one, which this kinda is. Okay, it wasn't cheap, but it's cheap, if that makes sense. So without removing these, I want to see what this looks like. And I think that's real cute. I think that's really cute. Okay, so let's do the same for the 4. Now remember, you want your double-sided tape to be small enough that it kind of hides. So you don't want it to be too visible. Okay. There we are. And then we're going to do the same for Mr. Spider-Man, Spidey. Oops, why is that still there? There we are. That is so cool. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is use an acrylic cake stick. And we're going to make sure that the top layer is peeled off. Okay, and this is why I positioned it in such a way. Let's just find where it is. I think that's where it's gonna go, so that it kind of hides. Yes, that's where it's gonna go. Okay, so it's up here. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna add hot glue. Oops, we don't want it to go over. Okay. Okay, let's just check it again. A little bit more. And that's good. Okay. Now we are going to hot glue the backing onto this. Being careful not to make it too visible. Okay. Now this needs to be lined up quite perfectly. Oops. And there we have our super cute cake stick. Cake topper. And how simple was that? And I love how it turned out. So much better than I thought. So next we will do a shaker cake topper, so keep an eye out for that video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something useful.